checking audio. Okay, the audio's rolling. Hey, welcome to my podcast. No, what the hell? What the hell? Who am I? Okay. Take two. Welcome back to another episode of my podcast. I'm super excited about this episode. I just finished recording it. I got to talk to my friend, Bobby Kim. He started the hundreds with Ben. I don't know Ben's last name. I only know their Instagram handles, Ben Hundreds and Bobby Hundreds. I'm sorry, Ben. I'll figure out what your last name is at some point. But Bobby's a good friend of mine. It's a crazy story how we met. And we talk about that in this episode. We recorded this episode over Zoom and due to COVID. And I think it's a really great episode. We talked all about how he got into the fashion business and how he started out blogging. Also, he went to law school. I had no idea he did that. That's how he met Ben, and who he started the hundreds with is from law school. So it's a really great episode. And yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that this is a Zoom video. What am I saying? I don't even know what I'm saying. Anyway, I just wanted to say hi before we get into the episode. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube if that's how you watch this. Apple, Spotify, rate, review. What else? Oh, I have a Patreon. The Patreon's super helpful to me and to Anthony, who I don't pay. Someone got so mad. They were like, why don't you pay your producer? I'm like, it's a joke. I pay him sometimes. No, don't. If you guys help me out on this Patreon, Anthony can get all dripped out, He'll have all this hundreds merch soon. I got this for free. Shout out to Bobby and Ben. But, yeah, it's a really great episode. Make sure you subscribe to the Patreon, which is just patreon.com/Ali Mukovsky. There's a $5 tier. There's a $20 tier. There's an in-between tier. So check that out. Is that it? I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Enjoy the episode. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. DM me. Slide in. Talk to you soon. Okay, great. So now you can pin my video and I can pin yours.
Okay, now you're pinned.
You're pinned.
You're pinned. You're a pinner. Pin times. Okay.
I would have gotten all done up for this podcast, but I'm so exhausted after this weekend that I was like, I can't do glam. That's because there's a filter on here. There's a filter on Zoom where it like kind of blurs your face a little bit to give you like a glow.
Yeah, I'm going to do it right now. Touch up my appearance.
Yes, touch it up. Yeah, you look great. You look fab. Did you bleach your hair pre-quarantine and now this is the growth of 6 to 8 months?
Yeah. No, I bleached it mid-quarantine. I bleached it in like April or March or April, May, April. The girl who cuts my hair, she bleached it. But the whole thing was bleached and it's just growing out. And we do this. So
this is how long we've been in quarantine?
Yeah, you can gauge it by. That's exactly how long, I can tell you.
Yeah.
I'm like a tree with its rings, except it's my roots.
Yeah.
And this is my version of bangs, I can't control what's happening in the greater world around me, but I can control my hair.
Yes. So yeah. What do you think this is? You think this is me just like having a great time? No, this is me trying to manipulate some sort of situation.
Yeah. This is you screaming for help because you're spinning out of control like a top. I'm the same.
Yeah.
I'm full unbridled chaos and helpless rage inside. And it's manifested in bleached hair.
I love that. Okay, I just, we're rolling, we're rocking and rolling. I just want to formally introduce you to the pod. This is my friend, Bobby Kim. Do
Your
you
best
use your
friend.
last name?
First of all, your best friend.
I know I was going to say that, and then I was like, I don't want to like overwhelm you or like make false claims.
I would just end the interview. I'm like close to the computer. You're like, this is my best friend. I'm like,
You're like, I got to go.
my real last name is Kim, Kim, really original for a Korean guy. But yeah, sometimes I don't care. I go by it. It's just that
I wasn't sure if it was like a
SEO.
secret.
No, it's not a secret. SEO, search engine optimization wise, there are a lot of Bobby Kims.
I
There's a
understand.
there's a Korean pop star named Bobby Kim. He's much more famous and more talented at dancing than I am, although I'm a good dancer.
Wow.
But there's one Bobby Hundreds, so I just lean into that one because it's
Yeah.
you know.
Did you and Ben both coordinate like, okay, we're going to do our first name and then hundreds for our Instagram handles so we can both.
When we started, there was no Instagram, so it wasn't even a conscious social play. It was, kind of forced it upon him because it was inspired by the Ramones and 7 Seconds and how the punk bands that I grew up in listening to. I didn't grow up in those bands. Grew up listening to those bands. They kind of all share the same last name to show that that they remember, like Kevin Seconds from 7 Seconds, and so I wanted the same because so much of the ethos of the brand was borrowed from growing up in the hardcore scene and wanting to have a brand that felt more like a band. So that's
Yeah.
what that was. Yeah.
And how long have you officially been like how long has the hundreds been around? Like when not just like the idea of it, but like when did you first start officially like doing the hundreds?
2003 is when we started the brand. When were you born, Allie?
I was born in 95 and 2003 was a big year for me as well.
What happened? You had your period?
No, oh my god, 7 years old? That would be
Doesn't
insane.
that happen though? Isn't that like a thing with like hormones and meat and whatever? I don't know.
Sometimes people start young. I got mine when I was 13, but in 2003 I was 7 and that's when I got my first job being employed by Kiss FM with Ryan Seacrest.
Oh, that's right. I think
Yeah.
people, have you shared this story with your audience, your followers? Do they know this part?
Yeah, I don't talk about
Okay.
it too much because it's kind of like the same story and it has the same ending every time. There's no like cool, interesting follow up. So
Right.
I share about it just generally every now and again. But yeah. Okay, so you started in 2003 with Ben
While you were on the radio,
while I was on the radio. Our careers were
I
both just
I was
beginning.
I was listening to you on the radio, and then I had this wild, harebrained idea to do this project. Yeah, Ben and I, we started it. So we were 23 at the time. We're 40 now. 23 years old. We were both in school. We were both in law school in our first year of law school, and yes, we both went to law school, Ben and I. That is also a story that I feel like I've told enough times, but I remember people forget or people never
Yeah.
knew. But Ben and I, we met in law school. Yeah. So
Wow.
but we were the black sheep in law school, and we were at that time early 2000s. This is 2003. Collecting sneakers was not what it is today. It wasn't a mainstream thing. It was still very much an obscure niche thing that we had been into for many years, just individually. And streetwear brands, being into streetwear, the New York brands like A Life, Sur, Supreme, obviously, and then being conscious of what was going on in Japan, also with a lot of those brands like Bounty Hunter and Neighborhood Double Taps and Bathing Ape. And so we were kind of into this world of street fashion. It wasn't really called streetwear at the time. It was just more independent streetwear brand, t-shirt brands, more or less. And I was, I fancied myself an artist. I wasn't ever technically trained or anything. I just wanted to make a living making art and designing stuff. And so I had this idea of building a website driven by my writing because I was a blogger. Before social media, we had blogs, and when blogging started in 1999, I had a pretty like a daily updated blog where I would just muse about culture and fashion and stuff. And so the idea was to start a brand where we infused the blog and this daily transmission where I would journal every day, like Doogie Howser. It's a really old reference, but it's like I would sit there at a computer and be like, this is what I think about everything today. And then I would put my art against it on T-shirts, and Ben was going out and selling it to stores because there wasn't really e-com at the time. So that was the idea.
So this is all while you're in law school.
This was all while we were in law school. Yeah, we started in our first year. We met at the end of our first year. There was actually 4 of us initially. It was Ben and his friend Matt, and it was me and my friend Drew that we were both in. The 4 of us were in school together, but Ben and I weren't as close as these guys were. It was actually more Mac and Drew that were buddies, and they would get together and talk about, hey, this first summer after our first year of law school, let's try to make some money. You know, they were just kind of like scheming on like how we can make some money. And they had this idea to start importing shoes from Japan. Nike Dunks were just kind of starting, like the first wave of that retro craze. And so Air Force Ones, Dunks, Jordans, like maybe we can import in Japanese sneakers. And Undefeated had just kind of opened up on La Brea. And so the idea of sneaker collecting was starting to become a popular thing in the underground. So we're like, maybe we can import sneakers. And then I had this idea. I was just like, hey, look, I've been thinking of starting this t-shirt brand and blogging against it. And it was just going to be a fun project. I just wanted to do it as this emotional creative outlet for me. And then Ben was like, hey, look, like I can actually figure out a way to make money doing that, because that's Ben. He's a hustler. And I was like, I had no intention of making money off of it. I just wanted to do it, which honestly to this day is still how I operate and think about a lot of my work. Is like I don't really think of the profitability first. I do it because I just think it'd be really fun, or I just want to find a way to do it. Then I figure out how to make money later. But Ben was, from the beginning, like I can make this make money. And the other 2 partners, they kind of fell out over the course of the first year, and then it just was Ben and I. So Ben's my partner to this day.
Wow. So I'm guessing you guys dropped out of law school.
No, we didn't.
Wait, so you guys are both technically lawyers?
We're both technically lawyers. We went all the way through, because it also, if you think about it, it's a great, you're living off of loan money. You can just kind of float, because the first couple of years you start a small business, you really don't make any money. Any money that you do, it goes right back into the business. It's a little bit of a different game today, because you can get a really fast start using Instagram and social media to build an audience, and then you can explode right away. But back then, to build a brand the way that we were doing, and especially in streetwear, it wasn't like a really profitable career, sustainable career path. It was just more of like an artistic endeavor. And so the idea of, we were just doing this for fun, and we just wanted to live day to day. And so it was kind of nice and easy to do that while you're in school. It was just kind of like a side gig. And then at some point in the final year of law school's 3 years, and in the 3rd year, Ben came to me one day and was just like, I have crazy news for you. And I'm like, what? He's like, we turned a profit today. This was like 2 years into the brand, and maybe not until 3 years in were we actually making enough money to pay our rent. And that was all I needed. I was like, to me, that was the same as if someone had came and said, you made $1 million. I was just like, I'm free at that point. Like, I'll never be able to replicate that feeling. It was like the first high. If I can survive off of living off of my dream, it's like, unparalleled.
Do you think because, okay, I have a couple questions. Was the atom bomb the first big thing you did? Because I feel like that's something that's been consistent throughout the hundreds. So I'm just wondering if that was like one of the first designs that you put out and like did for the hundreds, or is that something that just like caught on later?
It caught on much later. In fact, I didn't draw it until 3 or 4 years into the brand. We didn't have a logo. I didn't really even want to have a logo the first few years. It was just mainly about the art. So every t-shirt was different and people knew us for, sorry, my computer. People just knew us for different things. And so I wanted that. I didn't like being pigeonholed or narrowly categorized or classified as, oh, you're known for this one thing. I wanted people to buy the designs because they're into the designs and not necessarily for the brand. And so it was kind of in reverse. And that was just me being like a purist art guy and saying like, I don't want the brand to speak on my behalf. I don't want people to buy it just because it's this name. I want people to buy it because the art really resonates with them, or they really appreciate the design or how we made something. And then a few years in to the brand, that's when I started drawing this silhouette of this cartoon bomb. And it was inspired by Looney Tunes cartoons, which was a big part of my youth and the culture of my youth growing up in the 80s and the 90s, and animation. And if you are familiar with the type of art that I'm drawn to and that I do, it's largely illustrative and cartoon based. And so I love this idea of this silhouette of this bomb because it never really exploded. If you know, it's just always right about to get there. And I, as a metaphor for the greater company, I was like, this is exactly how I want to formulate what it is that we're doing, that we never really become entirely mainstream or blown out or oversaturated, but we're always riding that line of keeping this underground energy without going to mass. And then one day Ben was looking at that bomb and he was like, you love drawing cartoons. Why don't you make kind of like a cartoon version of that bomb with a face and anthropomorphic version? And so I was like, cool. And I drew this bomb with the face and turned him into a cartoon character. And then I went on, we didn't have social media again. So I went on my blog that night and I said, hey, I just drew this. It's 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. I don't have a name for him. If anyone wants to name him, just email me. Like literally just gave my email address, just email me. And I woke up a few hours later, I had hundreds of emails from around the world, and 2 different people, one guy in Hawaii and one guy I think in Europe. 2 different people chose the name Atom Bomb, and I thought that was funny to give him a human name, because of probably like Family Guy, and the dog's name is Brian, and I just always thought that was funny, to like name a cartoon like just like regular human name. I'm like, that's just Adam, and so we went with Atom Bomb. Yeah.
I love that. That's so cool. And then I was also wondering, like, when I was in high school, I feel like every dude senior year was like, I'm starting a t-shirt company. Like, I'm starting a clothing company. I don't know if this is just like an OC thing where I went to school, but every dude senior year started a clothing company. They would have like parties where you had to be wearing one of their shirts to get in. Is that something that was like happening when you were going? I'm not sure if this is like a generational thing or whatever. But that was definitely a thing at my school. Was that something that like happened when you were growing up where you like noticed that? Or was this just totally just kind of you and Ben meeting in law school and coming up with this?
I think there's always been a thing around kids in high school starting garage t-shirt brands, but like everything back then, it's not like everybody played guitar, but there was like a few kids who were into that. There wasn't, everyone wasn't into um, whatever, like a certain subculture, but there was like the clique that was into that. That's how it was for us, especially in the 90s. It was the subcultures were broken down. These cliques were broken down in subcultures, and everyone was kind of into their thing. And so there were a few kids there that were into screen printing and knew how to make a t-shirt. Wasn't so much about building a brand or a business, but just I have things to say, I want to put it on a t-shirt. So I think that's always been a part of American culture, because screen printing in itself is an art. When we were starting the brand, what was happening was there was this kind of renegade iconoclast movement of these independent street fashion brands that were tied to street artists graffiti guys like Future and Stash. Rob just started a brand called A Life in New York. A lot of these, let me turn this off so that it doesn't sound like I'm in a Disney cartoon and like there's fairy dust being sprinkled on me every time that makes that sound. I don't even know how to turn that off. That's
I'm
going to
not
happen
hearing
every now and then.
anything.
Sorry. Oh, you
That's
don't
okay.
hear it?
I don't
There's
hear
these
it.
weird notifications. You don't hear, do you
That's
even
okay.
hear
You're a
me?
busy
Are you even
man.
listening? I
No,
am
I
busy. There's a
haven't heard
lot of appointments
anything.
notifications. Oh, okay. So now I just sound crazy. Where every 5 minutes I'm like, ah, make it stop in my head. This noise. But there was anyway. So there was these street art preceded really a lot of this boom in street fashion, streetwear, and it was this wave of in the mid '90s to late '90s. A lot of these really great street artists, which eventually became mainstream mass artists like Banksy and Shepard Fairey or whatever. That movement
Do you know who
caused.
do you know who Banksy is?
No, but his building is nearby us, and we only know this because we have a mutual friend who told us his headquarters is right here, and he didn't say where, but it's in this vicinity of where we are. Which, if you know where the hundreds is located, like you get it. Not our store, but our office. But he's around here somewhere, supposedly. Yes.
He's my new Bigfoot. I'm gonna be strolling the streets around your office trying to find him.
I know. I isn't it just bonkers that people in this day and age when everything is recorded and filmed that he still is getting away with putting up art. He just did another thing during COVID where he took over a couple trains, I think, in the UK and just bombed some like metro like subway type of
I
trains.
saw
But
that. Also, it's
yeah.
crazy because I feel like it's so hard to keep secrets nowadays.
Yeah.
That the fact that no one like I've never been to a party where someone's like, I actually know who Banksy is.
No, I know
But,
many of my friends do. A lot of the guys, I mean, even if you think about he participates in Beyond the Streets and in these art exhibitions where my friend Roger runs those things, so Roger has to interact with him, and I have other people who
mm,
did business with him back in the day when he was first coming to LA, even before he was blown up, and was giving him the walls for him to paint on. And I know people who directly, a lot of these guys know him, but when I ask, it's just kind of like yeah, man, you can't ask me that. Like,
damn,
but
crazy.
people have photos and video. They're like, no, I have photos with him, and when it all, and I'm like,
But I'm
how did
sure
he?
but because no one knows who he is, like I could have a picture of me and Banksy on my IG, but as long as I don't say Banksy, no one knows.
Maybe they've been doing that. You never know.
No one's seen me and Banksy in the same room. That's all I'm saying.
No Banksy
Um,
art has happened while you've just been sitting, like when we've been seeing you live.
yeah. Um, okay. Also, so are you saying that your blog, when you first started it before the hundreds, that you had were blogs just like people just knew you from the blog scene as well?
No, 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 no. No one knew me from the blog scene, but I did
Got
have
it.
an active blog. Some people did. Okay, so that's the thing. Also, in the blog days, you didn't know who knew you. There was no follower count. There was actually no real analytics. You couldn't even tell how many people were reading your blog. So my personal blog before the hundreds, every now and then I would get just a really random email. Like I would write about Evisu jeans, and then the marketing person at Evisu would be like, "Hey, I love your blog, and I thank you for mentioning us." And I'm like, "Whoa, this is a trip." I'm just a kid in a studio apartment here in LA. It was the same when we started the company. The first few years of us, me writing this blog every day, I had no idea how many people were reading it, just millions. And then I talk about this in a book, in my book. I have a book, but in the book I talk about how what made me realize how many people were actually reading was when I was talking shit about Pharrell, and then Pharrell and his team and his crew were like not happy about that. And I was honestly just, imagine you just talk shit about any celebrity, like fuck Billie Eilish, or whatever, like Donald Trump, like it sucks, whatever. And then all of a sudden you get this note like, yo, like Trump is not cool, not happy. So that you'd almost be like, oh my God, I can't believe it's easier to believe in today's day and age where you can send out a tweet and actually like hit the person. But back then it was like writing a note in a bottle, chucking into the ocean. All of a sudden Pharrell got the bottle and you're like, that's crazy. How does he know I'm here? And so that was the first time that I realized, I was like, oh, maybe we should actually check the analytics on this thing. And it turned
Yeah.
out there were millions and millions of people that were reading the blog every month. And so
Wow.
that changed everything for me, because in good ways and bad ways. Good ways where I took advantage of that, but also bad ways in the sense that it wasn't just me singing in the shower anymore. I was very conscious of what I was doing. And there's like a little bit of the magic wears off a little bit. It's a little less innocent and a little less honest, honestly. Like, can't be super brutal about everything anymore.
Totally. So you trolled Pharrell, and then years later, haven't you worked with him on projects?
Yes. Yeah. So what was really great was, he's a super gracious dude, and that was a thing. It turned into like just it turned into like a little bit of this weird beef, not between he and I, but just around like our surrounding crews. And that was a thing that kind of continued to go on for years, and people bring up every now and then. But we had a chance. We met up a few years later, and I was just like, "Yo, man, I was 23, and I have half a brain, and I don't even know what I'm talking about." But besides that, he and I were talking at one point about starting a brand together. I pitched him on this idea. That didn't come to fruition. And then recently, this summer, actually, I reached out to him for a BLM shirt, just to recognize Black Lives Matter during the summer. We had to do something that was really noisy that would be able to raise a lot of money. We raised it for the Black Mental Health Alliance. I thought it'd be really important to this year talk more about mental health than anything else. And so he was super down to do it. And we made a cool shirt that was more about fusing us and like my favorite era of his brand, Billionaires Boys Club, which was, we started in the same year in 2003. And so there was just like a lot of story there. But yeah.
That's really cool. Um, yeah, and then just going back to like the blogging and stuff, like obviously your writing is really incredible. Especially after the protests and the movement after, like with BLM, especially being so big in the area where your store is, there was like a lot of police activity on Fairfax right by your store, and you had this sign up right above the 100 store on Fairfax and Rosewood that said, "We'll be back." Is that what it said?
No, what this sign, we put it up, it was before George Floyd and everything happened. It was just a billboard that said, "We miss you." Because it was
Yes.
like an honest sentiment of, we miss Fairfax, we miss the world, we miss each other, and I just want to let everyone know that you're missed. But the protests, the George Floyd protests in LA, they turned into rioting right on our doorstep.
Yeah.
That Saturday afternoon, if you're familiar with what happened in LA, to anyone who's listening, is that there was a protest that started in Pan Pacific Park and was headed west into Beverly Hills. And the police obviously did not want it in Beverly Hills. So the protest got rerouted up Fairfax, which was just a tinderbox, because Fairfax, the neighborhood that our store is on, is home to Supreme, is home to some of the best sneaker stores in the city, all the cool streetwear brands. And so as night started to fall on the city, then it just exploded right there. The riots began on our doorstep, like literally CNN reporting from our doorway. It's just really insane to watch this happen. And our billboard hanging over the entire intersection said, "We miss you." And everything is
Yes.
there's this huge fire in front of the shop. And I was watching all this, people were texting me and like, "This is crazy. Like, are you freaking out? Are your guys protecting the store?" And we had some of our guys down there. We had other guys that were like, "Look, we'll come because we're armed and we'll make sure, we'll protect and we won't let." And I was just like, honestly, like, I'm just not for that.
Yeah.
It's windows and clothes, and it's all easily replaceable. If that's really not what this is about. I think people are really upset and trying to be heard, and they feel like they haven't been heard. And if they are going to use our walls to express their frustrations, then like let them paint on the walls. And they did, you know, and it just wasn't like, I don't see how it would have helped any situation for me to go down there and start shooting and hitting people and defending some t-shirts, when like that's
Yeah.
really not what, because I'm frustrated too, you know. A lot of the sentiments that people have been carrying, whether it started this year or whether you've been angry for many years or since the beginning of time, you know, we share a lot of that, of like, this is not okay that this is happening, or like even George, in the vacuum of George Floyd's death, like that's just not okay. Like I want to be able to express that. So that was me also expressing it, of like, look, I wrote something about, even if you bring the fire to our doorstep, like I'll stand in the fire with you. And I think that just that was just a different, you know, it was just a different path than maybe people expected a business owner to take. And I didn't want to speak on behalf of all business owners, because I'm also very cognizant that I'm in a position where my entire livelihood is not in that store, right?
Yeah.
That's just one of the things that I do. And for some people, many small business owners and shopkeepers, their whole life is in that store. And so, you know, I understand if they feel the need to react differently to it. But for me, it just wasn't that. And I think it went kind of viral because people were like, okay, well, here's like a different take on the situation. Maybe we can look at it this way too. And that's always what I'm trying to do, is just offer, perhaps we can look at it differently, as, you know,
Yeah.
what you would expect. And, but yeah, that was a statement I had to make, and I think other people were making. And I think in the end, people have been heard in some ways. And so I think there was a lot of positive that came out of that.
Yeah, just because obviously like with your background with writing as well, it was just the way that you worded, cuz I'm referring to your Instagram post where you wrote about that, and you had the picture of the billboard in your store and the police car like burnt down, and I remember talking to my mom after it happened. My mom was like, "I just don't understand why people are looting, like whatever." And I remember saying, I get that you don't understand, but some people, feel like that's how they can be heard. And obviously, it's creating a conversation that we're having that we might not have had
Right.
if looting hadn't happened. And I sent her your Instagram post, and she read it, and she was just like, it allowed her to kind of see it differently. And, I think fashion and like clothing can be very powerful, and then also your background in writing is also very powerful. And
Mm.
yeah, I just wanted to mention that and kind of
It's a
gas you
really,
up.
oh, well, thanks. It's a really textured and complicated and nuanced conversation that an Instagram caption doesn't capture, a night of looting doesn't
Of
capture.
course.
It's like so complicated, and I think it's worth having the conversation, having it's, you know, to your mom's point, it's totally fair that she is confused. I don't know where she is right now, but within her community and within her life experiences, that type of thing appears totally nonsensical. And even in speaking with, you know, I know people who are looting, you know, and even in speaking with them and their outlook on things, and even to them, they recognize the opportunism in it of, oh yeah, dude, it was kind of like crazy. I mean, I've never been able to afford anything, and I have, but even to them, a lot of it didn't make sense. And there's just so much of this is born in chaos.
Mhm.
And what does it say? It's of the greater society if all of these things are happening, people are basically making decisions that are chaotic. Um, I think we have to look at, you know, we can just complain about them or critique them, or we can also not either or, but we can also look at what's happening around it and saying there's this really critical profound issue happening within our society right now, where a lot of nonsensical things are happening, whether it's chaos in our government and our administration, our political leaders, whether it's chaos within our capitalist structures and, the great wealth disparity, people not making billions of dollars and not paying taxes, like that's looting and chaotic as well.
Totally.
And just because these people have been able to get it around it because they have the money and the power and the prestige to do it, it doesn't mean that it's any less or more ethical than what you would see, a 15-year-old kid walking into a store and going like, I can have $100 pair of shoes for free right now and there won't be any repercussions for it. And I'm really angry about everything. And no, there's no justice anywhere. I'm going to take the $100 pair of shoes. I don't know how you can weigh those things sometimes. And so I just, if we're going to talk about that, let's also talk about this. Let's also talk about all these other wrongs and ills, because that's the bigger issue to me. It's the small mom and pop businesses that are suffering in a broken economy, in a recession. They can point to looters and say, because of them, I'm going out of business, or they can point to someone like, Jeff Bezos, who is really putting a lot of small businesses out of business. So I don't know, like,
Yeah.
we should have all those conversations right now.
Yeah. That's why I think, like, social media can definitely be a tool in a lot of ways, and it can also be kind of a distraction in some ways. And I think I'm curious for you starting the hundreds and starting your business before the age of Instagram and all of that stuff. Now with social media, it's so easy to start a business, promote it, and maybe like, get a lot of hype initially. But I feel like because of that, a lot of brands or businesses or artists or whatever, it can be a really quick high and then a really quick collapse as well. Do you think if you had started the hundreds during Instagram and like, at a different time, if it would have affected you guys significantly or in
Yeah,
like
of
a different
course.
way?
Yeah, of course. I compare it to how music artists were pre-Napster, pre-MP3, pre-download streaming days. And if you were fortunate enough to have built your foundation of your career before that, it's just a different kind of a band that has a longer legacy. And the music artists that have come, post that in the last 20 years or so, they just have it's a different type of trajectory for a band like that. And it's the same with brands, just the way that e-com and social changed the DNA of how they promote and how they sell. It affects the longevity of the brand. I think it's still very possible, but it requires a lot more work. Whereas to your point, that's the greatest issue. That's the biggest problem, biggest hurdle for any brand today, is that it's not hard getting the customers anymore, building the audience. That always used to be the hardest thing. You would have a great product, great design, great work, and the marketing was the difficult part. I just want to get 10 people, 5 people just standing on a street corner with a sign, or like taking out an ad in a print newspaper, or just whatever they used to do back then. Ads in magazines used to be the thing. And you would just slowly collect audience, customers, and not even have an email list, but just organically. And brands would develop really, really organically. And if they were able to do that, because the growth was so logical, and the progression was so natural, that it just would sustain for a really long period of time. Now, when you start a brand, it's not hard to build a fan base. You just have to have a social platform, and then you just connect, you hashtag, you throw a targeted ad, and you start collecting emails. And that's not the hard part. Anyone can do that, whether you're making music, art, building a streetwear brand, whatever you want. But the hard part is then fulfilling those requests, so you get $100,000 in orders which sounds crazy to someone my age, but to a 20-year-old kid, they hear those stories all the time now. My friend started a brand, or my friend's on YouTube and he started selling merch. Oh my God, he made $100,000 overnight. Okay, great. That's commendable, but can you fulfill the $100,000 in orders? And that's what breaks most businesses, because they can't fulfill. They just don't have the infrastructure to keep up with it. They don't have the customer service to deal with like the returns and the complaints.
Yeah.
They can't deal with the production and all that. I know for you, like, you made this shirt and it sold out right away and you're going to make more. But as you see, it's like, that's not the hard part. The hard part is actually running the machine. I'm sitting here in our office in our building, and there's like 100 people running around and handling all these little parts to accommodate the $100,000
Yes.
orders, you know?
I don't know why. I mean, I'm like so naive about certain things. I remember visiting your warehouse and being like, this is all yours? Like, there's people who work for you. There's like so many boxes in that back warehouse. I don't know why I was so surprised. I'm like, Bobby, you have like an entire operation.
Yeah, there's like a village. It takes a
Yeah.
village to run these things. And
Yeah.
kids are, a lot of these kids are starting brands as one or two people, or like just their homies helping on the garage, and they're like, oh, got $100,000 in sales. And I'm like, that is your worst. That's a curse, because that
Yeah.
will destroy you, because you won't be
Yeah.
able to keep up. You don't fulfill the orders. You're going to have to return everyone's money, or you send them products 6 months late, and they're never going to trust you again. And now your brand's been eroded.
Yeah.
But that's, it's a weird thing to watch now. And so I think we would have definitely have been affected by that if we had started, because when we took off, the first 3 years of our brand, we were really quiet. It was a really, really gradual rise. And then I'd say around year 3, year 4, we just kind of exploded, where I could draw a picture of dog shit and it would sell out, because it just had the name associated with it. And
Yeah.
even then, during those days, we were crippling under the stress because we didn't have the proper infrastructure. And so I can't even imagine, I can imagine, because we work with other brands, and we have a print shop here where we print for a lot of these brands that I'm talking about. And I see it, I'm watching them live through it, and they're just like, they can't keep up with the production. And that's the thing. Yeah.
I think that's the best advice, though, for anyone doing any creative endeavor, whether it's comedy, music, fashion, whatever it is. It's like, I think honestly, the best advice, like when I started stand up, everyone was like, don't expect anything for the first 10 years. Like, keep everything low key. Like, just do your thing, keep your head down, put in the work, because it's only going to get like harder, and you want to be ready for when like the cool things do come. And I think nowadays, because of Instagram and social media, we know, like, we're addicted to that instant at least I am, the instant gratification. Like, I post something,
Yeah.
I immediately get at least one like,
Yeah.
And so when you're starting something new, it's like, don't expect any likes. Try not to get likes, but just like do whatever you need to do, because then when the likes or the, orders or whatever start coming in, you're like, okay, I've done this before. I know what to do. I'm a little bit more experienced now. Whatever. I would like to tell the Bobby and Allie origin story for those who are wondering how I'm best friends with such a cool person. I love this story.
Please.
This is my favorite story. I'm going to give my rendition of it. If you have anything to add, please feel free to interrupt me.
Okay.
Speaking of starting comedy or starting a creative endeavor, for the people who know me, they might know that I was a bit upset. Well, okay, how do I word this? When I got my license, I would drive up to Fairfax. I would often hang out at the Odd Future store, hoping that me and Tyler, the creator, would become best friends. Unfortunately, that never happened. But once I
Tyler
started
watched you
stand-up,
the other night. Tyler was there on Friday night.
I know, and I was
Did you see
freaking
Tyler?
out. I did see Tyler.
So we just threw a festival here in LA, and a food festival, and Tyler was there on Saturday night. Sorry to interrupt your story, but you're closer to being his best friend.
I am one step closer, but I realized seeing him this weekend, when I heard that he was going to be there, I was like freaking out. And then when I saw him, I was like, oh, I'm not 17 with like no life and like just clinging on to the idea of something anymore. And I think it was like a good thing where I saw him and I was like,
Ah,
oh, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But it
yeah.
was still cool. I mean, I would still love to be his friend.
Right.
um, but I would go to Fairfax all the time. And then when I started doing stand up, there was an open mic on Fairfax at Cantor's, which is right by the Hundreds, right by Supreme, right by the Odd Future store. So I would sign up for this open mic. I would have to wait like 3 hours to go up. And so in the meantime, I'd flirt with the boys at Supreme, try and hang out with Tyler the Creator, and then hang out at the Hundreds. And I was sitting there one day, I'm like 17 or 18, like smoking a cigarette outside, just lingering on Rosewood and Fairfax. And you walked out of the Hundreds. And honestly, I had no idea who you were because I don't really know. I'm just trying to find a boyfriend at one of these streetwear stores, you know?
Right.
So I'm just hanging out smoking. You come outside and you're like, "Can I take a picture of you?" And I was like, "Of course," because I love getting my picture taken. And I was like, "Will you email that to me?" And you're like, "Yeah, for sure." So then you email it to me, and your signature was like Bobby Kim, comma, underneath that it said the Hundreds. So I'm like, "Who's this Bobby Kim that works for the Hundreds?" Thinking you're like a retailer. So I Google it, and I'm like, "That's the Hundreds. That's the Hundreds." So then I email you. I'm all cool. I'm like, "Thanks for the picture," and that was it for the most
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
until maybe 3 years ago when we reconnected via Instagram.
Okay, this is the story that I actually kind of forget. How did that happen? Did I come across you again, or did someone? How did that happen? Because
Yeah, I
I
feel
didn't.
like
I don't remember.
I don't really remember either. I'm sure if I dug into our Instagram DMs, I could find out. But I feel like maybe I posted something, or you posted something, or a mutual friend of ours posted something, and then you were like, I think I might have messaged you being like, "Oh my God, like you're the dude who took the picture of me."
Yes, I think it was something like that. And you said this is the photo, and I was like, I remember shooting that photo, and I remember you. You
And you
had
said, "I want
long
to,"
brown hair.
yes. And I think you were like, I think at the time you were like, oh, okay. I DM'd you December 20th, 2018. I said, "Just saw your account and remembered you took the coolest picture of me 5 years ago on Fairfax. I sent you the picture." You said, "Oh my God. Yes, I remember this. You were new on the block." And then whatever. And then eventually you were like, "I want to get another picture of you." So I went to your warehouse. We took a picture. We reconnected. We had a whole story. And it's been magic ever since.
Yes, this is exactly what happened. Which
And
was
I'm
only really about I guess now it's been 2 years, pretty much since December 2018 that we've reconnected. But yeah, that's what it was. I used to take photos of everyone who used to come by the store, including people like kids like Tyler when he was growing up, just hanging out in front of the shop. And so taking pictures of everyone, and I came out and you were so random sitting there because you weren't with, there's usually just like clumps of dudes that are just smoking and skating, and there's clumps of dudes. And then there's this white girl with brown hair, and she's just sitting there up against the wall. And I was like, this is so random, but it's also a part of the store. It's like the ecosystem of the 100 store was always that. It was like the most weird people coming together, and then like beautiful things would happen. So I was just like, this is also a part of our lifestyle. And I remember taking a photo, and I remember you saying, "Can you email it to me?" And then I sent it. But yeah, it's crazy. Even when I see that photo pop up now, I'm just like, God, that's Allie. That's like, she turned into Allie Makovsky, and she's world famous now.
it's just interesting, like, you know, when I was in high school going up to Fairfax, I always wanted to be a part of that. Like in the way that I imagine that you wanted to be a part of kind of like that punk lifestyle,
Yeah.
like how you
Oh yeah.
said,
Yeah.
you know, punk inspired you in a lot of ways in music. And it's like being in Fairfax, like I really was inspired by a lot of the people over there. And I always kind of wanted to be a part of that kind of culture of like the cool kids doing cool stuff and like
Yeah.
doing their own thing. And the longer I've done comedy, it's just crazy how much smaller my world has gotten. And working at the chicken wing spot on Melrose, being right by Round 2, and becoming friends with Justin, Jay Boozy, and then having him eventually work for you, and me being like, oh my God, I know Bobby in this weird way. And then hosting this family style festival drive-in theater event for you guys. It's like, it's just so cool. And like, Errol is a part of that, and like Errol used to work at the Odd Future store, and I probably like
Yes.
got bullied by him when I used to hang out there because he probably could
Yeah.
tell that I was just this weird lingering girl. And so like, I don't know, it's just so crazy. It's really cool how it all comes kind of full circle, and how everything's meant to happen the way that it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, LA can be a small place. I don't think LA is a geographically small place. I think there's a lot of people here, but when it comes to particular interests and different niche cultures, they're small, and we all end up kind of knowing each other. And then the
Yeah.
longer I stay in the game, the longer I've been doing this, it's just like the network is really deep. And so it's cool in that way because we are a community, and this is a lot of what I talk about in reference to the brand and the importance of the reason for a lot of our success has not as much to do with like the branding or the design. It has to do with we've really tried to reinforce and feed this community over and over again. So you were a part of the community back then because you're hanging out at the store, and then now you are, like a cornerstone of the community. You're hosting our events. So I love
It was
that.
so
It's just kind of
special.
like, yeah, yeah.
And I just, we'll wrap this up soon. I was just thinking, like, while you were talking, it's like, I don't know if this is like a really bad thing to say or a really good thing to say, but I feel like you're kind of like a fashion Jonathan Gold, the way that you speak about the streetwear. Is that canceled? Am I allowed to say streetwear?
Yes, you can say
Okay.
streetwear. As the
Okay.
Jonathan Gold of streetwear, I allow you to say that word.
Just the way that you capture how the LA community and the fashion community and the way that you speak about it, it's very, I don't know. I feel like Jonathan Gold had a really great way of capturing LA through food, and I feel like you are able to capture that through fashion and the way that you write with your book, This Is Not a T-Shirt. In the way that you create these events that bring the community together, like family style, and the collabs that you do, which are really amazing. My producer Anthony over here did want to know. He was like, at some point, he just texted me this during the podcast. At some point, ask if he's ever going to release more Lamb of God collabs with 2 prayer hands and a baby angel face and a heart.
Yeah, absolutely. I still talk to those guys like almost every day because Randy's always surfing out on the East Coast, and then Art lives out here. But that we did this project with Lamb of God during the pandemic, and I just love this new album, it was in support of this new album, but it sold out so fast to the point where I didn't get the T-shirt, and so I've been trying to buy the T-shirt off of customers, but no one
Oh
wants
my
to sell
God.
it to me. And so it's rare when that happens where things sell out all the time before I can get to it. And I'm like, oh, I missed that one. But this is one where I was just like, that one was really for me. And like, it kind of sold too fast. So I hope so. But to go back also to your point about Jonathan Gold, I think, one thing I can say that we do have in common, or did, because he's not alive anymore, is that you can tell he really, really enjoyed and was passionate and about what he was doing, and he really cared about the community, or he really cared about food. Like you couldn't fake that. Like he really loved what he was doing, and I feel that way about streetwear, and street fashion, and these artists and these designers and these kids starting brands. Like I'm still just as excited by it at the age of 40 as I was when I was a teenager, which is because I'm Peter Pan. I just never grow up. It's probably just an immaturity, an emotional immaturity thing, but I just really, really care. Like it's so cool to me. And it's so awesome to see young people basically create brands are their way of speaking out and being heard and being represented. And then they have a stage and a platform, and then they're invincible. And that age is just so magical to me. I just love it. They're invincible, and they think that they can change the world. And because they think they can change the world, they do end up changing the world. And so I'm not a young person anymore. I'm like a dad, but my focus is always still on the younger generations because I know that they are really the ones moving the culture. And so like, I just want to be near that, and I want to understand it and study it. And it's so complex, but it inspires me. It's like, they keep me on my toes. They keep me inspired to do what I do every day. I've never lost my zeal for what it is that I do and why I do it. And so like I've been really fortunate in that regard. Many, especially in streetwear, it's easy to get jaded in this game for a number of reasons. It's really grueling and hard to sustain. There's just like a lot of smoke and mirrors too. And once you see past it, and honestly, it's predominantly dudes, and like most of the dudes are just assholes, and it's just really easy to get jaded and become negative about all this because it can be bullshit. But I just never get caught up in that. I try not to get caught up in that energy as much as I really try to keep my focus on like high school kids, college kids that are like, I have an idea and I think I can do it, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to put all my eggs into one basket, and this is all I can think about, and I'm not going to stop until it's successful. And I'm like, that is fucking amazing. Like, that's an amazing thing that as you get older, people lose it, and they're just like, it's my job and everything sucks, and fucking America sucks, and Trump sucks, and the world sucks, and climate change sucks, and everything just sucks to them. But then you talk to kids, and even in the midst of a global pandemic where everything is falling apart, you talk to them and they're like, yeah, I know that sucks, but I have this idea. Or like, oh, but you know what I'm going to do? You know what I'm working on? Oh, my friends, oh, we're going to do this. And like, that's so cool. Like, you can bottle it up. It's streetwear.
Yeah.
You can get into that.
I think that's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Do you want to add anything else?
No, I'm just really, I love Allie so much. I'm so proud of her. This is also illustrative of what I'm talking about right now. Is I'm drawn to Allie's energy because through her eyes, I get to basically live vicariously through like this really hopeful, like you just have this amazing future ahead of you. And I'm like, I get to do it all over again. I'm immortal when I hang out with people like Allie, because I'm like, oh my God, she's just getting on the roller coaster, and I'm going to ride it again through her lens. And it's exciting, and it's maddening, and there's sad and despair, and there's joy and all of it. And I'm like, this is going to be great to watch. Like, I'm so excited to see this happen for Allie.
Especially when I vent to you about all my boy problems.
Which is part of it, young love and romance. And I do a texting thing where I have my phone number through the community app, and people can text me, right? And I get thousands of texts a week, and I reply to every single one, believe it or not. And people say, what do kids talk? It's mainly dudes. And I'm like, they're like, what are they asking? I'm like, they're mainly young guys. And they ask, number one, about how to build their streetwear brand, or they have some career aspiration, or they're kind of lost in their job and they want to know what to do next. Okay, I got that. But secondarily to that, most of it is about, my heart's been broken. My girlfriend broke up with me. I like this girl. I don't know what to do. I'm a sophomore in high school, and my girlfriend cheated on me, and the world is over, which it really is at that point. Like, that pain never goes away. My high school girlfriend cheated on me, and I'm still in therapy for that. And so this is also just like a part of young innocence, and like figuring out the world is also trying to navigate love and romance. And that's what I love talking to people like Ali about that too, because I'm like, God, that's like such a part of life that you forget about as you get older, and you're just jaded. And I just don't want to be jaded.
Yeah. Yeah. Your kids are adorable, by the way. I'm so glad I got to meet them this weekend. And yeah, thanks
They're
again
really
for
good.
having me at Family Style. It was so fun.
Of course. We all agreed that
Hopefully,
you were the best host ever.
hopefully there's going to be an Ally Mac The Hundreds collab soon.
Oh, I'm positive of it.
Okay, thanks for doing this.
You're welcome.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Bobby.
Bye-bye.
Oh, my friends, they think I'm dead.